On behalf of Pete's immediate family, Ian and Lisa, Mark and Mara and Quinn, Brett and Andrea, we welcome you to this incredible celebration of a life well lived. We are more than grateful to be able to hold it on Indigenous land and in this beautiful park that Pete and I love so well. In particular, we are happy to welcome the guests who have come from far away, and we have people completing the whole circle from east to west and from north to south joining us now. So we're very grateful to have you here. There's always housekeeping to be done at an affair like this. And so here we go, we'll get that out of the way. We apologize if you are among the people who do not have a seat. We really did not expect this many people to come. And we have exhausted the resources of Qualico in terms of seating. So this is my suggestion. If you see someone in a seat, we're going to take a number of breaks. Go and pick them out and ask them to trade with you for a little while. I don't know any other way to deal with this. But we will take breaks so that you can indeed get a seat. In terms of drinks, I'm sorry we ran out of free tickets, but there is a cash bar. I see the lineup is long, and again, there's nothing we can do except invoke your patience, please. The washrooms are down the hall. If you need them, you can come and go from the outside of the building if you're dying of heat, but you can't take your drinks. The order of activities tonight is as follows. We're going to begin with a video tribute from Pete's family in England. Pete's nephew spent many days interviewing all the 20 or 30 members of his family, some of whom are 97, to gather a family history. He and our grandnephew then edited it down to 10 or 15 minutes. So that's the first item. Second on the agenda is our long-term friend and neighbor, Richard Harbeck, who will give you some insight into our neighborhood life. That will be followed by Brad McKenzie, who's going to speak about Pete's life as an academic in the School of Social Work and later the faculty. Then we're going to take a break. Following that, whoops, what happened? Good. Okay, following that, Maureen Taggart is going to speak on behalf of Two String Players, because as you know, Pete's maybe first love, but I hope his fourth love is theater, because I know soccer and piano somewhere were in there. But Maureen will speak about Peter's theater life, and we will take yet another break. Finally, the three sons are going to speak about Pete as their dad, and I will close the day. So that's how we're going to go. We hope that this won't leave people standing up for too long. Hope you won't be shy to kick people out of their seats if you need to. And we will begin right now with the video, please.
unforgettable warmth that will last me the rest of my life. He had a smile that could melt icebergs. He was the greatest storyteller ever. He reminded me so much of my mum. I went to stay with Sue and Pete in 2014, and it was the greatest adventure and the warmest, most coming home feeling that I'd ever had. Pete made me feel like I was his, and he had a playfulness and a sense of humour and a deep understanding of people that I fell in love with. I remember the hugs, I remember the laughter, I remember the talking, and I remember that he was my sponsor at my at my confirmation. And when the priest said we will now show each other the sign of peace, Pete, instead of shaking a hand in a very English and formal way, just grabbed me in a massive bear hug until I was laughing out loud. He made people forget their inhibitions, and he made people remember what love was all about. And Pete, I will never ever forget you. I love you so much. Big hugs to Sue and the boys and everybody that is missing Pete, because I know he's left a massive hole.
Uncle Pete, well, we never thought we'd have this day in our lives, and yet here we are. Such a sad time for us all, but so many lovely, happy memories I have of you, times I've spent with you. The Christmas I spent with you in 1980, when I was made to feel so welcome in your family, in your home, remains one of my very favourite Christmases, despite the fact that you tried to freeze me to death out in the frozen Lake Winnipeg somewhere on some skis. I will never forget that day, and I'm sure you never did either. But lovely, happy memories. Also of the summer that we spent with you in 2002, when we all took a road trip across Canada. Again, wonderful time with myself and the children, who just thought you were the best thing ever. Never met anyone like you before, and probably never will again. You will be remembered for your kindness, your generosity, your huge personality that wrapped everyone up in your world and made you feel special. I could go on forever, but everybody knows what a wonderful, wonderful person you were, and what a huge gap you will leave in all our lives. You'll never be gone, really. You'll always be in here and in here. Bye-bye, Pete.
Oh, he was special. I think I'll just say, you've been very special to me. You are close to my heart. That's all I need to say.
He was a lovely little boy. He had little podgy hands and little dimples. I can remember the dimples in his hands. And when he first went to school, I can remember the dimples were still there. When I patched hold of his podgy hands and took him to Miss Rose's class, the infant school, and I went to her class as well. She'd had all the Hudson children, and she said, "Oh, another one of the Hudson children. I hope you're as good as your big sister." And he just grinned, She soon found out that he wasn't as good as me, but anyway, that was another story. Getting out of the chores. If there was any wiping up to do, which he's capable of doing, he skipped it. He'd have his meal, and then suddenly you'd look round for Pete. He wasn't there. He was laughing and smiling all the time, showing his great big huge teeth. He saw the funny side out of everything. He was just cheerful, and everybody remarked how cheerful he was. But of course, You had to be cheerful living in our family, otherwise, it would have got you down, because it was hard living in our family, with all three in a bed, and you never got second helpings. But Peter was always there, you see. He was a crafty little chap. Everybody loved him, all the neighbours loved him. He was very, very popular. What he came up against to face, he just faced it. And that's all it was. He just faced it with a great big grin, and he just did what he had to do.
Peter was the seventh son of my grandparents, Nana and grandfather Bear Hudson. And my dad was the firstborn, and he was 20 years older than Peter. He called him his distant relative. Now, in contrast, I was only 6 years younger than Peter. So although the family tree said uncle-nephew relationship, the reality was Peter was more like a big brother to me. Peter's first role in this regard was to get his young nephew to and from Sunday school on Sunday afternoon, and to induct me as an altar boy, which he did to my dad's satisfaction. The benefit for me was that I was able to join the church soccer team support group, church soccer team of which Pete was a star player. Now, away games involved coach trips away, and all of Pete and his mates got aboard with their guitars, so we very rapidly learned all the words of the current folk songs. And remember, this was the protest era of Dylan and Bias. And we also learned a lot of words of songs more suited to rugby tours than altar boys. So Pete's next role as the big brother was when I started at the Northern Grammar School as a very nervous first year, and Pete was an upper sixth form senior prefect. So we made school history as the first uncle-nephew pair to attend school simultaneously. Peter distinguished himself at Northern Grammar School, not just academically, but as he won colours for tennis and football, and starred in all of the school plays. So Pete was the first of the Hudson family to win a place and attend university. He went to University College London to read arts. During holidays he came home, and I remember one holiday he got a job as a bus conductor, and became very, very famous on the late night bus because he took his guitar and entertained all his regular passengers with many, many songs. Distance and divergent interests gradually and inevitably separated us. Peter studied humanities. I became an engineer. Peter was an avowed pacifist. I joined the Air Force. He emigrated to Canada. I emigrated to South Africa. As we know from the many tributes that Pete has received, he was enormously respected for his community work, for his sporting organisation, and his contribution to local dramatics. He was a legend. We will remember him as a bon vivant and a passionate champion of the underdogs. I suspect Peter would have liked nothing more than to have been on a stage delivering his own eulogy. Alas, that is not in the script. Heaven is surely a better place because Peter's there, but the earth has lost one of its best.
Pete and I connected. He was the youngest of 7, I was the youngest of 5, and I suppose in a way there was a sort of desire, being at the end of the family, to go off and do something different. He emigrated to Canada. He was the first member of his family to go to university, as David said. And I became an actor. That was good enough, and we got some rub for that. What I admired most about Pete, and there are so many things, was his politics. He was uncompromising, and he said what he thought. Him and Sue picked up young 19-year-old Americans who didn't want to be in the Vietnam War. They drove them to Winnipeg and they stayed in their home for 6 months. They probably had babies at the time. And let's face it, without Pete and Sue, those boys would have very likely have died in the Vietnam War. So Pete was not an armchair socialist, as so many of us are, let's face it. He stuck by his principles. He was a union man. He was working in a sustained, continuous way to make people's lives better, to protect his fellow workers. And he told it as it was. I admired that about him tremendously. I've just finished a play and I knew that Pete had gone, and every night I asked him to help me, to go out there, be nervousness, creative, and be at my best. And you know what, I was. And I admired that about him. He was so interested in theatre. As soon as he retired, he started doing plays. I think he was running the local theatre group during COVID as well. And I'd only wished I could have seen him act. So we shared that. And I admired that spirit. He loved his football. He used to come over. We used to go and watch Pompey. He was a Pompey fan. It was fantastic. We had a great time. And the boys as well. And he was actually, for Christ's sake, he was playing football into his 70s. Fantastic. And Pete's energy. He'd walk in a room, just like Kathy said, those bright blue, sharp, icy eyes coming right through. He'd take your hand, hold it tight, and give you a big cuddle. His energy was amazing and so warm and gorgeous. And he listened. He really listened. And he was interested in everybody. And he was interested in what you had to say. And it's no wonder that so many people loved him, because he gave everything. He was obviously a great dad and a great husband. He loved his family. So much to admire about him. So much. And we are all at a loss now. So I loved him. And I loved him, and I think he loved me. But he made it obvious. And I'm just sorry that I can't be there today. So all of you have a lovely afternoon talking about Pete and remembering Pete. Lots of love to you all.
Okay, it's my pleasure now to introduce to you our longest term in Winnipeg friend and neighbor. We have lived 51 years, 3 houses from Richard Harbeck. We have raised our children together. We have developed a neighborhood together. And in the last week, he and his wife Joan have been my solid supports. So I introduce to you Richard, who is no stranger to many of you. It seems he has taught a whole lot of you. So we'll see if he has kept his skills home as he pays his tribute to Pete. Richard Harbeck.
I've been told to keep this short. I'm sorry. A story about Peter, you can't be sure. Although we haven't had any laughs and joyous moments on his behalf. Our first meeting 50 years ago was at Christmas, and it was the year that Pete and Sue and the boys moved on into Ash Street and their very special house. And they were so excited that they had a fireplace. Now remember, Pete was a volunteer fireman when they were in Prince George. So he knew how to handle the axe Well, it turns out, Joan said to me one Christmas evening, there's a fire truck down the street. I wonder if it's our new neighbor. It was our new neighbor and their house, which they proudly enjoyed the fireplace that caught fire. Pete went to the rescue along with the fire department, and they solved the fire problem. Now, 50 years later, I said to Joan, there's a fire truck down the street. And it was at 2 weeks. And as it turns out, Pete had a stroke, and the ambulance people couldn't get him out of the house, so they had to call a fire crew to truck him over the snow. Nevertheless, our beginning and end was flashing red lights. We have, in a way, I'm here to offer a few words on behalf of our friends on Ash Street, which we proudly call ourselves the Ash Street Gang. There's a group of us that became haunted by our children, many of which are here. I include Colin and all the others, Ken Marshmeyer and so on. Since that first fire, we have shared our annual celebrations, including Christmas, and later on, as you will see, Labor Day. For a long time, we even celebrated St. Patrick's Day, thanks to Mary and Wayne Kinsella, who used to live on our street, along with their children, Colin and Joanne. We witnessed together as a street group the weddings of first Ian, and then Brett, and then the wedding of our own children, Chris, and then Kathy. So it's a good street to live on. It's a very busy street. The big annual event, without doubt, was the Christmas Carol Party, to which I'm sure half of this room has been. 45 versions of this Christmas caroling party happened consecutively without fail. Believe it or not. What was even more amazing, we were given a book with the carol words, 48 carols. By the time we were finished singing all of those carols, thanks to the lusty leadership of Pete, who knew all the words, we managed to sing our way into a huge friendship. Pete was forever the master of ceremonies. He handled the complicated carols, which had several parts for different people in the room. He knew how to distribute And when I sat there, I was in awe and also in pain, because I knew how hard that was to do this consecutive journey. The other event that always amazed me that we did it, because I wasn't follower of the Labor Day celebrations. We spent Labor Day, many Labor Days, at Falcon Lake Boat Club and cabins. Now, I won't tell you all the stories of me and Joan and others in the sailing boat with Pete. But Pete, as well as Sue, were masters of the sailing craft. And if I wanted to learn how to sail, I was in the right place. They knew how to sort of talk about the jeeps and man overboard and all of that. We have, as a street, celebrated 25th wedding anniversaries and even a 50th wedding anniversary for Pete and Sue. We bolstered the audience at the Irish Club, at the theatre audience at the Irish Theatre, Shoestring Productions, and even at the Fringe. Pete should have got a commission for this, because we provided a healthy boost to the ticket sales. As expected, the composition of that street and our gang has changed over the years. Kate Preston, who is no longer with us, Art and Lorraine Briggs, the Parades, Ken and Diane Corban, Mary and Wayne Kinsella, Tom and Debbie Chan. The list goes on. They all got hooked into this web that was created by the northern side of Ash Street. Pete, thank you for initiating, contributing, making us join in and attend, helping us now with your friends, especially at events like the Christmas caroling party. We've learned to respect labor and the workers. Your echoes are strong and loud, and they are ours to hear and respond. We regret that we no longer have a chance of uttering the name King Charles III, or comment on upcoming reruns of the coronation. We would love to hear your grumpy comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And now I'm happy to have Brad come up and speak to you. Brad and Pete were on the staff at the School of Social Work for many years together. And together they have been the pioneers of decolonizing Aboriginal Indigenous child welfare in the province. Brad has many stories I'm sure he'll share with you about his adventures with Pete. not the least of which is swearing that he would never appear at a conference with Pete again because Pete took up all the allotted time. So now it's Brad's turn.
This is a full house, and I can never remember any of us, including Pete, have capacity crowds at any of our lectures. But I guess, part of this is dependent on Pete sort of doing something that brings us all together. And, from the footballers to the actors to the neighbors to the friends, social workers, and here we all are celebrating his contributions in all of those different roles that he carried. It's an honor to be asked to say a few words about Pete, a dear friend to me, to all who are here this evening, and to many others unable to be here. It seems like only yesterday that Madeline and I were sitting in Pete's and Sue's living room discussing our next get-together, where we could share a few laughs and rail on about the latest injustices and conspiracy theories, a meeting we never got to share. My remarks focus on a few highlights of Pete's academic career at the University of Manitoba since his hiring in 1970 and where he worked until his retirement. These include his roles in teaching, research, and scholarship, and his leadership as director of the School of Social Work between 1984 and 1989. But these roles are inseparable from his activism and his compassion that he brought to relationships with friends, students, and colleagues. Qualities echoed in the many tributes posted on Pete's obituary section. Pete also, and it's already been spoken about, had that witty sense of British humor that made him such a gift at parties and other occasions that provided an opportunity for storytelling. I have it on good authority that Pete described his teaching role as a jack of all trades, a tribute that is sometimes used to describe a good generalist in social work jargon. He was also an excellent teacher in these many trades. His teaching evaluations and the notes from some of his former students who posted comments on his tribute page attest to this. I remind you of a few of these comments here. One former student who became a senior administrator in an Indigenous child welfare agency in Toronto noted, "Nobody but nobody had more influence on me. He persuaded me to go into social work when I was lost at sea. I have been an activist all my life because of him." The second had this to say: Pete was a tremendous prof, tough but even-handed, and always down to earth. Thank you for your passion and knowledge. The third former student noted that in many ways his social work practice and policy were decades ahead of the curve. And another said, "I remember him as a dynamic, open, and caring teacher." These sentiments are summed up by a former student who had this to say: Pete was a committed and passionate professor, much loved by his students. On a personal note, I remember a conversation we once had about teaching when he said, teaching is a bit like acting. It's just that it occurs in a classroom rather than on a stage. I doubt I ever measured up to Pete's standard in teaching, but his reflection foreshadowed what was to become his second career as an actor, following retirement from the School of Social Work. Pete's commitment to innovation and social change went beyond the classroom, and I was join him, as Sue noted, on some of his scholarly adventures. Many of Pete's contributions reflected his commitment to decolonization, especially in relation to Indigenous control of child welfare services during the formative stage of this movement in the 1980s. He was one of the first scholars to demonstrate how the mainstream child welfare system acted as an agent of colonization in extremely of Indigenous children, families, and communities. A pattern we documented in the 1981 article first published in the Manitoba Social Worker. A few other research contributions where Pete played a major leadership role included a study of the effectiveness of Dakota Ojibwe Child and Family Services, Manitoba's first Indigenous controlled child welfare agency, his management of the Indigenous Child Welfare Certificate Program, a training program offered by the School of Social Work to help support staff in the emerging Indigenous child welfare system. His leadership role in the study on the culturally relevant needs of Indigenous adolescents in remote First Nations communities, and public presentations advocating changes in child welfare legislation and policies to better support Indigenous communities. However, Pete's research and publications went beyond his specialization in Indigenous child welfare, and his interests were varied. These contributions included writing about a collective model for policy practice in field instruction that we developed out of a storefront office on Isabel Street in Winnipeg, Inner City in the late 70s. The role of the voluntary sector in social services and his many publications of an advocacy nature in opposition to the privatization of Canada's public health care system. He also had a strong belief in activism, but activism involved much more than words. And this is reflected, as noted already, in both Pete and Sue's active role in the rescuing draftees during the Vietnam War. But he was also no stranger to a picket line and other protests throughout his career and following his retirement from social work. Pete's impact on the School of Social Work was particularly significant during his term as director of the school between 1984 and 1989. He was a strong advocate for the school, and a major contribution was the work he completed in the successful transition of the school to an independent faculty in 1989. But even more important was his approach to leadership. There were difficult decisions to be made during his term as director, but he got things done in a style that reflected his compassion for others and the creation of a true team spirit among faculty members. In summary, I can do no better than repeat the words of my colleague Sig Frankel, who noted that Pete was that rare person who combined steadfast values of caring with a strong intellect, courage, and optimism. I will miss Pete as a much-loved friend and colleague who has made major contributions to social work in our province. And I know these sentiments are shared by many, with the notable exception of Dr. Brian Day, who took offense to some of Pete's comments about his private for-profit health care clinic advantage. No matter, I know there was no love lost in the opposite direction either, and I know whose side I'm on. I've shared a few memories of Pete, but I'm also reminded of a comment by Nat Whitcomb, who tells us that we need not rely on memories alone to recapture the spirit of someone we have loved and lost. Special people like Pete live within our souls in some perfect sanctuary that even death cannot destroy. May this be a small comfort to all of us, but especially to Sue in the entire Hudson family. Thank you.
Now I have a rowdy group behind me. When we were faced with the dilemma of what to do about Peter's theater group, and I was sure they were going to want to put on a play, I had to bid, because I wasn't sure about that. So they have worked it out so that Marie is the speaker for all these people standing behind me who wish they could speak but have been sworn to silence. So I will now give it to Maureen, and she will say the piece on behalf of shoestring players. Thank you, Sue. Peter Hudson, a man of many parts. You just heard of Peter, the soccer player, the soccer coach, Peter, the professor, Peter, the social worker and published author, and provider of refuge in the 1970s. Peter, the loving father, grandfather, and dear spouse of Sue. So here we are, all clustered together, which is typical of shoestring. We can't do anything alone. And we're here to pay tribute to a beloved friend and to admire his ability as an actor. And a conscientious administrator too for shoestring. He was an entertaining secretary, and he was a moral competent. He was a formidable treasurer for many, many years. Peter joined shoestring in the year 2000, and in the intervening years, he has appeared in 31 shows. More often than not, in a leading role, and heading the castles. It is all lovingly commemorated in this book that I'm about to hold up, about 50 years of shoestring's life, and we're all very proud of this accomplishment. A man of many parts. Those of you who were fortunate enough to have seen Peter on stage are privileged indeed. His commitment to a role and his concentration backstage were never short of professional. This discipline resulted in a compelling performance each and every time. Maybe you are one of the people who, when invited to attend an upcoming shoestring production, would ask, "Is Peter Hudson going to be in it?" And on hearing that he was, "Oh," you would reply, "then I'm there." So as somebody previously said, he should have got permission. I don't think he did. Too late now, sorry. Those of us who were lucky enough to have acted with him, or were privileged to have directed him, will attest to his good humor, sensitivity, generosity and kindness to those on stage with him. He never put a foot wrong. He was held in the highest esteem by all of us here clustered about. Shoestring would also like to acknowledge Peter, the loving father, grandfather, who together with our treasured friend Sue, raised 3 fine sons, Mark, Fred, and Ian, who have wholeheartedly embraced the values of human dignity, inclusivity, compassion, and social justice, all instilled in them by their parents. Peter's beloved grandson, Quinn, he's a bit of an unknown quantity just at the moment,
but maybe one day, as splendid actor, 'tis a consolation devoutly to be wished. Before we leave, I would like to finish on a more personal note. Peter and I shared many stories about our Irish Catholic upbringing, and the fact that, although we may now be considered benevolent heathens, we often, because of our condition, would subconsciously call upon the deity, whoever he, she, or they might be right now, every now and again. I would like to now send our dear Peter on his way, on the wings of an old Irish lesson. I will translate later. For as soon as Shiri Babar or Kara leaves, Ni Megadagi Darishma. May our dear friend Peter have everlasting peace in his life. We would never see his like again.
Well, that fills the empty seats, so I'm sorry for those who are left standing. And I will call on my three sons, Pete's three sons, who are going to come and pay their tribute to Peter.
But first off, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. It really means a great deal to the whole family to have you all here. And I especially want to thank those who have traveled from afar, who are making a special effort to be here tonight. They really do appreciate it. And I would also like to thank previous speakers, Richard, Brad, and Maureen, for your very kind and thoughtful words about our dad. So, as Mom has said, we're going to be giving this little memorial to our dad tonight as a trio, because we figured that probably none of us were going to be able to get through this without getting pretty choked up. And so, for the next few minutes, you can consider us one interchangeable son of Pete, which was very much in Dad's tradition of walking into a room and shouting all three of our names, and then maybe the dog, in the hope that somebody would be paying attention when we saw it. And of course, it's impossible to say in a few short words, I promise these will be short, all the things that Dad meant to us as kids growing up. So we're going to try and hit some of the highlights for each of us, and we'll hope that by doing that, we'll be able to do some justice to his memory. For me, personally, as I was, especially when I was a young kid, but also as I made my slow and uncertain way towards adulthood, the feeling that Dad gave me that I will always remember is the unshakable, unquestionable certainty that Dad was in our corner against all comers, that he had our back, and that he would do anything in his power to help us, no matter what it took. And for me, that was a feeling like having a warm blanket on a cold day, like having a strong rope at my right hand when I felt like I was about to fall, and like having a mighty wall between me and the slings and arrows of this world. Dad was always at our soccer games and hockey games, shouting advice at the top of his lungs from the sidelines and from the stands. And I didn't always appreciate his advice, but I didn't always know what he was talking about, but I did always appreciate the fact that he was there. And I knew that he always would be there in every facet of my life, whether it was trying to help me pass junior high math, which he did barely, or more recently, helping me wrestle with some problem at work. But Dad's support and his help was never unquestioning or uncritical. Dad always listened carefully to me, and he asked insightful questions about what was going on. And his questions were always to encourage me to think about the values behind the decisions that I was making or the actions that I was thinking about taking. And his advice was always about getting me to think about how my actions might affect other people and whether or not it would be a good thing for him or for them. And once again, I was often kind of irritated by his advice because it wasn't convenient for me. But in the longer run, it always turned out to be the better path. And the other thing that I'll always remember about Dad is his irrepressible sense of fun and adventure. We've heard about that from a few other folks today. And, you know, he was just, no matter what he was doing, he would always bring to it this massive personality and this sense of adventure. And I think it was that sense of adventure that compelled him to leave behind all the comforts of home, of the familiar, of family, to leave England and emigrate to Canada. Although based on what his sister said, it might have just been a really elaborate dodge together with the dishes. But whatever the case, you know, he took that huge leap into the unknown. He had no idea of where he would end up or what he would do when he got there or how he would get there. And, you know, if he hadn't made that enormous leap, none of us would be here tonight to remember him, and none of the three of us would be here at all. So, on balance, I think everything considered, I'm really glad that he made that brave decision. And Dad was always up for anything, and that was one of the things that I really appreciated about him. And, you know, it was not necessarily anything grand, but even if it was just an impromptu soccer game or rampaging around with us in the schoolyard as kids, Dad put his whole heart and soul into the proceedings, and he infused them with this energy and humor and imagination. It's not every dad who makes up whole imaginary characters for their kids to interact with and play them, each with their own backstory. But Dad did that for us. And when we were kids, little kids, and he was reading us stories, you know, he didn't just read, he acted. Every character with their own accent and with their own voice. And for me to this day, you know, Captain Haddock from the Tintin comics, he speaks like Dad played it, without question. And Mom and Dad also worked really hard to make sure that we had plenty of adventures of our own as kids. And I know that a lot of that was Mom, because she was the one behind the scenes, organizing, making sure that we had clothes and had something to eat, and that the van was packed, and that we actually had somewhere to stay on our cross-country road trips. Because, you know, careful consideration and advanced planning was not Dad's way. How to remember destination, a hazy notion of where he might end up and when, and some vague idea of the plan was good enough for Dad. But those were, again, like never grand adventures. We weren't scaling Everest, we weren't paddling the Amazon. But for me, those days with my dad were some of the best of my life. Whether we were just canoeing in the Northwest Territories on some remote lake, or exploring caves on northern Vancouver Island, or paddling down some river, hoping that we would eventually make it to the Pacific Ocean, dragging our canoe over a bunch of sandbars that weren't supposed to be there. You know, those days were absolutely magical for me. And they gave me a sense of appreciation for the natural world and for the beauty and the variety that is to be found there. And I think they gave me a little bit of that ability to roll with punches, because, you know, quite often Dad didn't really know what he was doing, and nor did I. But no matter what befell us, what sort of misadventures happened as a result of our lack of planning or preparation or ability, Dad's enormous positivity, optimism, and sense of humor always saw us through. And maybe because he made his fair share of his own mistakes, he was also always very forgiving of mine. I remember when I was about 14 or 15, I capsized our sailboat, which was never designed to be capsized. sending a bunch of very expensive gear to the bottom of West Hog Lake. And Dad had to get a professional diver to recover. And I remember floating around in the back of that sailboat thinking, oh Jesus, I'm in for it now. Like as Dad started to discover how much this is going to cost. But I never heard a word of reproach from him on that occasion, or on any of the innumerable other occasions, large and small, where I screwed up. Whether I was flipping the canoe at the wrong moment, or getting us lost, or just a teenage car accident. Dad was unfailingly supportive and reassuring and kind. And I think that's because Dad knew that those were the days that made the best stories. And for him, that was all part of the adventure. So for me, that's one of the ways that I'm going to remember Dad. Standing on the shore, rain wet, after some misadventure, with our gear floating off into the sunset. And him standing beside me with a big smile on his face, and his arm on my shoulder. Chances of me holding out that long before I cry are somewhere slim and none, but we'll see how we go here. I'm here to talk about one of the things that we actually did take really seriously, and that was his football, or what we call footy. He was involved in that on a number of fronts. He coached a lot of us here in our young soccer days. And in the 1970s, Manitoba, really what that meant was explaining to hockey parents why their kid couldn't play soccer in rubber boots, and the practice was actually going to go ahead in the rain, and unless their kid was literally made of sugar, they better be there. He also chauffeured pretty much the entire neighborhood to every single game in his VW bus. Not in those days was it for parents to chauffeur their kids around to every single game. No, they just dropped their kid off at the coach's house and expect them to take the entire team to the game. Then in 1975, along with Pete Hudson, Pete founded Crestwood Saturday Soccer Club, in which he would stay involved for the rest of his life. He played well into his 50s and was a blood and thunder defender who never backed down, never shirked from a challenge, and would willingly head even the most bullet shot away from goal, claiming against all medical advice that it only hurt when you flinch. For Pete, football reflected life. As in life, when he was about the team, the collective. He hated free riders and floaters who would shirk the hard work of covering ground and tackling back. Footy was about every single person pulling their weight, but it was also about every single person sharing in the reward. He insisted on an everyone play philosophy, which he, Pete, and John instilled at CSSC, even though as three of the best players on the team, it meant subbing off to be replaced by some recent convert to the sport who was wearing bell-bottom jeans and had a very dim understanding of the offside rule. And he was right. Many of those rubber boot and bell-bottom wearing soccer neophytes turned into absolute footy superstars with Pete's helping him. All Pete's loves and hates came together in one footy-related moment across the ocean. Pete's hometown team was Portsmouth City. It's ridiculous. This is great. You cry. Champion of England in Pete's young childhood days. Many in this room were at Nickley Nose, where Pete, along with his totemic Pompey gnome, watched Portsmouth fulfill the ultimate Cinderella story by winning the FA Cup in 2008 after beating football giants Manchester United and Tottenham. However, dark times soon followed. Criminal capitalists of the arms-dealing Ponzi scheme variety used his beloved Pompey as their personal plaything, funneling money out of the team and onto their luxury yachts, leaving the team slipping down the divisions and bankrupt, which would have ended the team. Unwilling to let the town's only institution of any note die, the community formed the Pompey Supporters Trust that was trying to save the team by selling community shares to thousands of Pompey supporters around the world. Pete signed up as soon as he could figure out the complex world of international banking, and it allowed him to save the team as part of a democratic collective. Tragically, it was a temporary victory. After paying off all the team's debts, the Pompey Supporters Trust decided to sell the team to Disney's Michael Eisner, who installed his kid as CEO. 7 years of stagnation and misery resulted. So once again, Pete was right. A more lasting footy success was CSSC, which is still going strong after 48 years. Even after he hung up his playing boots, Pete was a regular feature on the sidelines. He would commute in from Dorothy Lake to watch CSSC battle it out in the cutthroat world of Division 5. After games, he would join the team for post-match drinks with his very confusing order of hot rum toddy, accompanied by sausages, cooked on all 4 sides. He was immensely proud to see the second generation of CSSC, the Chalmers, the Penners, the Locksleys, and their friends, continue on the CSSC tradition of moderate on-field success and tremendous off-field companionship. Thanks, Greg.
I'm Pete Hudson, so I'll start running here. Another thing that we took seriously in addition to his football was the state of the world. He was really strong in public universal collective provision of health and education and housing. He was himself a beneficiary of early social democratic policies in post-war England. There were very few things short of yet another shoddy performance by England in the World Cup that would get our dad into a full, expletive-filled flow, quite like a healthcare crowd here, or a corporate tax dodger, or an imperialist hawk. He was not infrequently in one of his favorite formulations, disgusting, and how some people treated their fellows in the natural world. Luckily for him, and for our mom, and for us, he didn't express that just by shouting down the radio in the house, or muttering into his starving week. He got out and he tried to do something about it. He organized red strikes in Prince George in Toronto. He and his comrades on the CSSC Central Committee dragged the whole soccer team and all of their families to the annual Olympic Beach marches. He hauled us around on his shoulders at protests against U.S. imperialism in Latin America. He spent countless hours for the Canadian Center for Policy Alternatives, researching and writing and speaking out against the privatization and the underfunding of healthcare. He served for many years on the board of the Community Unemployed Health Center. He knocked on doors. He dropped pamphlets year after year for the closest thing we have to a social democratic political party. He wrote letters to editors, to MPs, to MLAs, to CEOs. He walked picket lines. He phoned university presidents and boards of government and he gave them an earful. He pitched in to help develop the Old Grace housing program. In other words, he resisted, and he tried to build greater good. He got to know many of you in this room through that resisting and through that building, and he would be moved to have you here to remember him. I don't bring this up to just give you a laundry list of Pete's list of activism. But rather be true to an aspect of our dad's life that was less fun and less heartwarming. He lived a lot of his life as struggle. And most, truth be told, he was on the losing side. And he gnashed his teeth at that when he was mad. He was not a man who fit the zeitgeist of the 1980s and beyond, the years of his late adulthood. He watched as fun politicians and corporate elites pour down many of the things that he held most dear in the world. And he endured the rise of a culture of individualism that he saw as poisonous. He watches the poverty, the sick, the elderly, the unhoused, or kicks the curb to benefit the already rich. He watched and he fought against a decades-long wave of deregulation, privatization, and the starvation of hard-won systems of public provision. So in addition to remembering Pete as we said in Will, as an actor, as a colleague, as a teacher, as an adventurer, as joyous, we'll also remember him as a warrior in a million moving battles. Never once communicated to it tirelessly. Throwing up his hands in the face of the inevitable, never accepting that there's no alternative. But staying with his right straight yet all, and fighting on. That is both heroic, and I see it as something deeply admirable, but it's also hard to live with and deal with sometimes. So let's spare a moment, and maybe later a hug, to empathize with my mom, who lived and loved our dad with all of his anger, as well as his warmth and his brilliance, his big smiles, and his joyful adventures. One of the threads that connects a lot of Dad's work in his life is community. Building a community, supporting it, sustaining it, and the enjoyment that he got from being a part of those communities was really of the utmost importance to my dad. Whether it's an acting community, a football community, a community of friends and family, people from near and far, that was really what mattered to me. And you are much of that community. So as that community that he loved, please join us in raising a glass or whatever you have handy. In honor and memory of me, to be. I think everybody, the thing that Pete would most want more than anything is for you to all enjoy each other tonight. So have a little bit of a drink, have some food when it comes around, connect with someone who you haven't seen in a while, give them a hug, say hello, have a conversation, maybe sing a song a little later on. We're going to have a little bit of setup going on, so get ready to sing. But above all, enjoy yourselves, have an amazing night. That's what our dad would want, and thank you for being here.
Just one more minute of formality. Sometimes the good guys sort of win. We heard the other day that Dr. Day's suit against Pete has been discontinued. Heard that. The previous speakers have done Pete justice. People have spoken about Pete's anger, his commitment, his love. Peter was also, unknown to many people, at heart a very humble man. He never, ever thought that he was anything special. So I think tonight gives some light to that, and I hope that you have all taken some of that away. Pete and I talked a lot as we were growing older about death and dying, and there were many thoughts about what happens after you die. Pete believed this. He believed that the memories that you have of him and of others you love will live on in you as you remember their activities, you remember their behaviors, you remember the things they did that made you angry, you remember the things that you did that made you proud. You will pass those on to the people you touch, and as you do that, you will remember Pete. And I thank you for that. And now, break time, and please, John McKinnon has organized karaoke, and Pete wanted a party, so stay and party. Thank you for coming, they're wonderful.